Chapter 1 You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Fell into a trap, love gone to dust. Gu Yoli took the lift up to the 18th floor and knocked on the door of the second room to the right. It was room 1808. Just as her fingers touched the door, it opened up on its own. It was pitch dark in the room. She called out, Meng Shan, but she was met with silence. She wondered as to why Meng Shan wasn't replying to her. Could she have left already? But then why didn't she close the door? Guided by the faint lights from the corridor, Gu Yoli walked into the room slowly but suspiciously. She asked loudly, Meng Shan, are you in here? She extended her hand in the dark room to feel around for the switch. Suddenly, her wrist was grabbed by someone. Immediately after that, she was pressed against the wall on one side. Gu Yoli's heart started racing in fear. Before she could figure out what was going on, a tall figure pressed against her. She was immediately assailed by the strong smell of alcohol. Gu Yoli shrieked in horror. Ah, who are you? What do you want? The man laughed, charmingly. It was too dark to see his face, but she could feel a cold aura that he was exuding. Gu Yoli's heart thumped vigorously. She had absolutely no idea about what to do in this situation. She felt as though her heart was going to jump out of her mouth. Her lips trembled as she said, let go, but before she could shout out the last word, her lips were blocked by a pair of burning lips that still held traces of alcohol on them. The man's kiss was like a hungry beast preying on his meal. It went from swallowing, to sucking, to nibbling, and finally devouring. Gu Yoli was shocked out of her wits. She was stuck between the cold hard wall and a burning hot chest as the forced kiss continued to create havoc on her senses. However, she was stunned only momentarily and quickly regained her senses. She pushed the man away with all her might but to no avail. Instead, she was pushed even harder against the wall. She wanted to shout out loud but her screams turned into moaning sounds after being ravaged by his mouth. Her moans sounded seductive and bewitching in the pitch-dark room, making the drunken man's ravage even wilder. Gu Yoli straightened her arm and tried to feel for something that could help her. However, all she could feel was the cold wall. What should she do? What should she do? Gu Yoli's mind was in a complete mess. By this time, her clothes were being forcefully removed by the man. Let go of me, let go of me. After screaming loudly countless times inside her head, Gu Yoli finally got the chance. The chance to breathe and shout. She struggled with all her might and used her limbs to push the man away. She kicked him hard. Let go of me. Hell, unfortunately, she could not finish her last word. Because her mouth was once again sealed tightly and her protesting limbs were also seized firmly. Someone save me. Gu Yoli screamed in her head. Heaven seemed to hear her cry for help because the door of the room was pushed open from the outside. The faint light from the corridor flooded into the room and Gu Yoli could see the woman standing there. It's Meng Shan. Great. She is saved. Gu Yoli opened her mouth and wanted to scream but suddenly, her beautiful eyes opened wide. She felt a piercing pain in her body which silenced all her screams. With the help of the faint lights, young Meng Shan, who was standing at the door, could barely make out the silhouettes of the man and woman, who were intertwined erotically in the dark room. She apologized quickly and closed the door, leaving from there. Meng Shan, help. Gu Yoli shouted immediately without caring about the excruciating pain she was feeling. However, the man had once again captured her lips. The light and the little hope, both had been extinguished and the room was filled with darkness, once again. Chapter 2 You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Maligned, eroded by love however, the man had once again grabbed her lips. The faint light from outside had been severed and the room was filled with darkness once again. Hey! Hey! Meng Shan, Meng Shan. Young Meng Shan, why did you leave? How could you leave? Save me. Gu Yoli screamed inside her head. Her moist eyes were filled with despair. The man was like a wild beast without any pity for her. He did not even seem to realize that it was the woman's first time. As time passed, Gu Yoli's body started to experience some changes slowly. Moans had started to escape from her lips. Enjoying it. The man's dark pupils were filled with an evil charm. He was like a devil who had come from the darkness. Gu Yoli's frail frame bounced up and down violently. She shook her head with all her might, but the man on top of her did not seem to be tired. Instead, his thrusts became faster and faster. Finally, Gu Yoli lost track of how long it had been. She only knew that when the man finally released inside her with pleasure, she was completely drained from the torture. Gu Yoli, who had laid limply in bed, sat up to put on her clothes after she had regained a little energy. However, before she could put her jacket on, the door to the room was opened once again. Immediately, the light was switched on with a loud click. Gu Yoli looked at the three people standing at the door with something akin to horror. Her boyfriend, Zhao Mingcheng, her younger sister, Yang Mengshan, and her good friend, Gu Huijun stood there. The light was blinding in her eyes after such a long period of darkness. The three of them were stunned. The first person to react was Gu Huijun. She shrieked in horror, "Ah, Yoli, you!" The man who had fallen asleep on the bed woke up with a start and slowly sat up. Gu Yoli did not turn to look back at him. Everything was still. At this moment, her eyes were only focused at Zhao Mingcheng. Zhao Mingcheng was also glaring angrily at Gu Yoli. His expression was filled with sorrow and anguish. He turned around to walk away without saying a word. Gu Yoli got up quickly and chased after him. The pain between her legs made her stop and take in a deep breath of the cold air. However, she did not care about anything and staggered out of the room without even putting her shoes on. She caught up with Zhao Mingcheng at the lift and started explaining to him anxiously, "Mingcheng, listen to me, hear me out." It's, smack. Zhao Mingcheng's slap landed on Gu Yoli's face and interrupted her words. Gu Yoli was hit so hard that she fell on the floor. Her cheek swelled up immediately and there was an imprint on her face of 5 distinct fingers. Blood started to trickle down from the corner of her lips. Zhao Mingcheng was engulfed by fury. He reached out and grabbed Gu Yoli's hair as he howled. "Gu Yoli, I must have been King blind to treat you as a treasure. I didn't even touch you because I respected you, but here you are King around with other men. This is infuriating. You promiscuous slut." That intense rage pierced into Gu Yoli's heart like a sharp knife. Gu Yoli's heart felt suffocated at that moment. She shook her head at Zhao Mingcheng anxiously and with grievance. "It's not what you think. Mingcheng, it was against my will. I was forced." Why did Mingcheng give her the death sentence before even hearing her out? She thought painfully. Zhao Mingcheng shouted at her once again, "If you didn't come here willingly, how could he have forced you? You don't want to admit to what you did. You're King disgusting." Gu Yoli felt as though her heart was split open with a knife. It was bloody painful. She sat down on the floor limply and the sobs which came out of her were heart-wrenching. She cried and tried to explain to Zhao Mingcheng. "Mingcheng, please, believe me. It's because Mengshan told me that my design won and had invited me here to celebrate." Chapter 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Stolen design, what a wicked woman. When did your design win? It was Mengshan's design that has won first place. Gu Huijun threw the magazine which she was holding, at Gu Yoli's face, as she said that. The magazine dropped to the ground. With a bad feeling in her heart, Gu Yoli looked at it. Her limbs were trembling when she saw the winning design on the cover page. That design was hers, indeed. It was exactly the same picture, the same idea, the same material. Wait, why was the name of the designer different? My. Gu Yoli stared at it, wide-eyed. She looked at Yang Mengshan in shock. Isn't Amy your name? Why are you the designer of this piece? Yang Mengshan glanced at Gu Yoli innocently and replied to her in a soft voice, Sis, this is my work. Of course, I am the designer. Gu Yoli had stopped crying but her eyes started to turn red. She looked at Yang Mengshan in disbelief. What? Your work? Don't tell me that you are claiming that it's yours, sis. Yang Mengshan's face had a harmless, bewildered expression. However, in a split second, there was a near undetectable ruthlessness in her gaze. Gu Yoli felt as though her heart had fallen into an icy chamber all of a sudden and she started shaking. She felt as though there was something heavy pressing on her chest and it was suffocating her. What do you mean? This is my design. Gu Huijun spat the next words at Gu Yoli. Gu Yoli, you're so shameless. You're actually saying that the design of Shangping's chief designer belongs to you, a jewelry salesperson. Even if you're envious, there's no need to go so far. Gu Yoli shook her head. She put her hand on her chest and said, Mengshan, you can't do this. This is my design. Give me an explanation. Her breathing became shallow as she was overwhelmed with despair. She reached out to grab Yang Mengshan's hand. Yang Mengshan shouted in shock and wanted to throw Gu Yoli's hand away. But Gu Yoli's grip on her was too tight and she could not free herself no matter how hard she tried. She looked towards Zhao Mingcheng and Gu Huijun in distress. Brother Mingcheng, Sister Huijun, help me. Sis has gone crazy. Gu Huijun glared ruthlessly at Gu Yoli and reached out to push her away. At the same time, Zhao Mingcheng held Yang Mengshan's hand and shoved Gu Yoli forcefully as well. Slut, let go of Mengshan. Gu Yoli was struck so forcefully that she staggered backwards. Her head knocked against something hard and she felt an excruciating pain. Her vision became blurry. Suddenly, she saw a handsome face through the haze. His features were refined, almost as if drawn personally by God. He was exuding the dignified elegance of an overbearing leader that made one want to worship him. He looked at her. His sharp gaze was like an icy knife that was arrogant but he seemed to be nervous about something. His thin red lips inched closer to her, seemingly to say something but she could not hear him. Gu Yoli could not see anything anymore either. She fell into darkness and lost consciousness. When she regained her consciousness, all she could hear was Yang Mengshan calling out to her. Sis, sis, wake up, sis, that voice sounded miserable and helpless. Just then, a middle-aged man's voice said apologetically, I'm sorry. We've already done our best but we could not save the patient. She has passed away. Passed away. Who's dead? Gu Yoli opened her eyes slowly and realized that she was lying in the emergency room of a hospital. Zhao Mingcheng and Yang Mengshan were standing next to her. As she looked at Zhao Mingcheng, her tears fell uncontrollably. She sat up immediately and reached out to hold his hand with the intent of explaining things to him again. But, she realized in horror that her hand actually passed through his. Chapter 4 You are listening at novelfull.audio. The pathetic truth. Gu Yoli's eyes widened in shock. She looked at her hand and tried to touch Zhao Mingcheng once again. However, she still couldn't touch him. Gu Yoli jumped off the bed in shock and saw that there was still a woman lying on the bed. That familiar face was her, Gu Yoli. How could this happen? Gu Yoli held her head in shock and screamed. Ah! However, no one could hear or see her. Everyone's gaze was fixed on the one lying on the bed. She felt the world spin out of control and she fell limply on the floor. She finally realized who the doctor was referring to when he had said someone passed away. It was her, Gu Yoli. Zhao Mingcheng was heart-broken. He shouted and cried at the person laying on the bed. Yoli, stop sleeping. Wake up quickly. I'll forgive you if you wake up. Wake up, Mr. Zhao, my condolences," the doctor said as he left the emergency room with the nurse. But Zhao Mingqing turned around suddenly and grabbed the doctor's hand. He glared at the doctor and shouted loudly. "You're not allowed to go from here. Save her, revive her quickly. If you don't bring her back to life, I'll kill you, do you hear me?" Yang Mengshan quickly reached out and hugged the hysterical Zhao Mingqing. She consoled him as she cried, Brother Mingqing, don't be upset. Sis is already dead." "Brother Mingqing," Zhao Mingqing looked as though he was hit hard by this fact and released his grip on the doctor's hand. After that, he reached out to hug Yang Mengshan. The doctor quickly took that chance to leave the room. Gu Yoli's tears flowed endlessly as she watched the two of them cry. She called out to them in anguish, Mengshan, Mingqing." Although Mengshan had stolen her design, she still loved her and treated her like a sister. Otherwise, she wouldn't be crying with such despair at her demise. She had forgiven Mengshan for stealing her design. She was her sister after all. She hoped that Mengshan could continue living well, blissfully. At this moment, everyone had left the emergency room, leaving only Zhao Mingqing and Yang Mengshan behind. Yang Mengshan suddenly pushed Zhao Mingqing away and walked to the door of the emergency room. She opened the door and looked around left and right. After making sure that there was nobody outside, she closed the door again. The despair and anguish on her face had disappeared in an instant. She looked at Zhao Mingqing and suddenly started laughing. Her laugh was cold and sharp and seemed to carry an ecstatic hatred. The sudden change made Gu Yoli's jaw drop. Zhao Mingqing's gaze changed as well and he chided softly. "Shut up." Yang Mengshan was stunned, momentarily. Immediately, she said with a sarcastic smile, "There's no one around, what are you afraid of? Or did you really fall for her and are upset?" Zhao Mingqing said angrily, "If I had fallen in love with her, I wouldn't have plotted against her with you, let her get raped by that man and then use that as an excuse to break up with her in order to be with you. I just hope that you can keep a low profile for some time. After all, we are partly responsible for causing her to hit her head on that nail." Gu Yoli's pupils dilated all of a sudden as she looked at them in growing horror. What are they talking about? A pain more piercing than death overtook her heart. Tears blurred her vision. Yang Mengshan's eyes reddened as she said with grievance, "Mingqing, are you blaming me?" Zhao Mingqing's tone softened. "Of course not. You know that I have always and only loved you. If you weren't careless enough to almost let her find out that you caused Gu Yanwei's death, I wouldn't have needed to get together with her to cover up for you." Chapter 5 You are listening at novelfull.audio. Back at the beginning, darling Mingqing. Yang Mengshan rushed into Zhao Mingqing's embrace and leaned against him, looking helpless. "I am pregnant with your child, now. You have to treat me well. I lost my mom when I was young. It's my fervent hope to have a complete and blissful family. Silly, don't worry. I will definitely make you happy." Their conversation was like a sharp knife cutting Gu Yoli, piece by piece. She felt the pain deep within her bones. It was so agonizing that she'd rather be dead. So, the one whom Zhao Mingqing really loved, was Yang Mengshan. Since Yang Mengshan had caused her father, Gu Yanwei's death, in order to cover up for her, he got together with Gu Yoli. The man, whom she had loved with all her heart, was actually a big fat liar and a murderer harboring nefarious motives. He set her up ruthlessly and got her raped by another man just to break up with her. Gu Yoli's eyes had been filled with tears, at first. All of a sudden, they turned fierce and violent and froze like ice chips. "This is too much. How can you treat me like this? I wouldn't let you off even if I've become a ghost." Gu Yoli bared her teeth as rage burned within her. She rushed towards them without a care, as though she wanted to kill them. However, at this moment, a strong suction from behind her stopped her in her tracks and she blacked out once again. After some time, she opened her eyes. She had a splitting headache and realized that she was lying on a bed. She lifted her head up and looked around. It seemed that the setting of this room was familiar yet foreign. Gosh, wasn't this the house in the little county where she used to live a few years ago? Gu Yoli sat up in shock and looked around again, dumbfoundedly. Her gaze finally stopped at the calendar on her study desk. The date was the 6th of June, 2010. That's strange. Wasn't she dead? How did she wake up again? And that too on a day 7 years earlier. Was she reliving her life? The kind of narrative that only happened in novels was actually happening to her. Gu Yoli's heart stopped for a moment. She quickly rushed to the mirror attached to her wardrobe. In the mirror, she saw the face of a young girl with pretty features. Her hair was resting on her shoulders and her eyes were hazy because she had just woken up. Gu Yoli raised her trembling hand and touched her face. This was what she looked like when she had been 18 years old. She was unable to describe the shocking feeling. She felt an urge to scream in excitement. In order to confirm that this was not a dream, Gu Yoli put her arm in front of her mouth and bit herself hard. Ouch! The pain was real. She really wasn't dreaming. She had gone back to when she was 18 years old. The sun shone in and reflected blindingly into her clear eyes. Every word, every scoff, and every expression of Yang Mengshan and Zhao Mingqing resurfaced clearly in her mind at this moment and echoed in her ears. That episode had left a deep scar in her heart. Gu Yoli stared at herself in the mirror coldly and squeezed her fists slowly. The corner of her lips formed into a cold scoff. I'm back. Your performance is over. At this moment, the door clicked open from the outside. A middle-aged man came in with a bowl of cold green bean soup. When he saw Gu Yoli standing in front of the mirror, the man smiled a little. Yoli, you're awake. Gu Yoli turned to look at him and smiled. Daddy. Chapter 6. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Protecting. She was very agitated to see her father once again. Her eyes moistened. Daddy is still alive, this is great. Gu Yongwei put the bowl of green bean soup on Gu Yoli's study desk and said with a loving smile, Here, drink this green bean soup to stay calm and cool. Tomorrow is your college entrance exam. You must not get a heatstroke. Gu Yoli relaxed her nerves and sat in front of her desk. Holding the bowl of green bean soup, she smiled and said, Thank you, Daddy. Gu Yongwei had held very high expectations of Gu Yoli in her previous life, but she did not manage to get into the college and he had been very disappointed in her. Her life also lost its light on this very summer day. It was also from this moment onwards, that Gu Yongwei showed more love towards Yang Mengshan and allowed her to have her way. Then why did Yang Mengshan cause the death of her beloved father? This was what Gu Yoli could not understand. She needed to untie this knot. She needed to protect her father. Even if Gu Yongwei were to show more love to Yang Mengshan, he was still her closest family member. He was also the only person who would sacrifice anything for her, unconditionally. Ever since she was young, he had taken on the dual role of a father and a mother to bring her and Yang Mengshan up. It hadn't been easy. Right before the college entrance exam, Gu Yongwei's love for Gu Yoli had been much more than for Yang Mengshan. He was also worried about Gu Yoli's future and kept reminding her that she must do well in her exams. However, Gu Yoli had missed appearing for the exam because she lost her exam admission ticket. Gu Yoli still remembered the sorrow and pain of losing her father at that time. She did not want to experience it all over again. In this lifetime, she must protect her father well and would not allow Yang Mengshan to cause his death. Sis. At this moment, a crisp voice floated in from outside. Immediately, a young lady in a pleated skirt ran into the bedroom like a gust of wind. Gu Yoli lifted her gaze and saw a beautiful, smiling face. Who else would this be but her younger sister, Yang Mengshan? Only, at this point in time, Yang Mengshan had not changed her surname and was still called Gu Mengshan. At this point, she also thought that Yang Mengshan and she were fraternal twin sisters. However, that hadn't been the case. They shared the same father but had different mothers. This was all because of what happened when her father, Gu Yangwei, got drunk once. When her mother, Yang Zhen, was pregnant, Gu Yangwei had sex with a female colleague in a drunken state. That female colleague was Yang Mengshan's mother, Yang Xiaoyun. Yang Zhen passed away after giving birth to Gu Yoli because of the difficult labor. Yang Xiaoyun was pregnant at that time but she did not tell Gu Yangwei about it. She gave birth to the child secretly. This child was Yang Mengshan. She left the child on Gu Yangwei and went away. The children were only 2 months apart. Gu Yangwei was afraid that it would be troublesome while doing their household registration, so he just said that they were fraternal twin sisters. Gu Yoli only found out about it when Yang Mengshan reunited with her maternal grandmother, Yang Kai. She went ahead and changed her surname a year after she entered the workforce post her graduation from college. Gu Yoli recalled that during the 2-day break before the college entrance exam, Yang Mengshan had told her that she was stepping out to buy something and had gone out early that morning. "Sis, guess who did I meet outside just now?" Yang Mengshan asked sweetly. Compared to Gu Yoli's pretty looks, Yang Mengshan was more beautiful. Everything around her would lose their color the moment she simply stood there. Her features were delicate. Her lips were red like cherries and her skin was snowy white. Although she was only 18 years old, her beauty was already beyond comparison. She looked like a masterpiece. Coming from outside, her face was warm due to the blazing sun, looking like a red apple. Chapter 7. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Sudden cold shoulder. Her mind flashed back to the scene in the hospital after she had died. Gu Yoli found it hard to show affection towards her and pushed her away, subconsciously. However, Yang Mengshan put her arms around her relentlessly. "Guess quickly, sis." She pouted at Gu Yoli and looked very cute. "I don't know." Gu Yoli smiled a little but the indifference in her eyes was as cold as frost. Yang Mengshan could sense Gu Yoli's indifference and was a little bewildered. Why was she not being like her usual self? She had been holding her hand and joking around with her last night. She became anxious and asked her. "Sis, are you angry at me for not asking you to come along when I went out in the morning?" Gu Yoli's smile was arrogant and cold. "No. I'm just tired from all the reading. I'm really tired. I want to take a little nap." She didn't know if it was because she had been plain stupid or that Yang Mengshan did a really good job at concealing herself that she never sensed her evilness in the previous life. Instead, she had been proud to have such a beautiful sister who finished her graduation. She had cared for her with utmost sincerity, buying jackets for her during winter, fearing that she would feel cold and buying an air conditioner during summer to help her avoid too much heat in her dormitory. She used to be afraid that Yang Mengshan would not have enough pocket money and she would lose face in front of her classmates, so she scrimped and saved to give her more money to spend. Yang Mengshan would always sing her praises and say that her sister had the purest heart in the entire world. Gu Yoli only realized now that it was not pure but foolish. As her train of thoughts ran on, Gu Yoli was filled with self-mockery, sorrow, and even more doubts. Was the Yang Mengshan who was being affectionate to her right now, already scheming against her, or did she change when she entered the workforce? Also, did she find out the truth about them not being fraternal twins a year after she joined the workforce when she reunited with her grandmother, or did she already know about it at this point or even earlier? Gu Yoli really wanted to find out all these things, but right now, she needed some quiet time, not to sleep, but to revise her work. In her previous life, even though she missed the college entrance exam, she had taken a look at the questions after that. Thankfully, she could still remember most of it. So, she needs to revise her work well. Upon hearing Gu Yoli say that she was tired and needed to rest, Gu Yangwei quickly said, "Sure, then Yoli, take a nap." Mengshan, get yourself a bowl of iced green bean soup quickly and take a short nap, too. Your teachers gave you a break so that you can rest. Stop going out to play. Young Mengshan glanced at Gu Yoli with sorrow and pouted. She hesitated but then followed Gu Liangwei out pitifully. Gu Yoli's gaze sharpened immediately. She watched her for a few seconds before flipping her textbook open. Gu Yoli slept very late that day. She revised the questions for the exam over and over again. Even though she slept very late, she woke up very early and was feeling rejuvenated. Because of the college entrance exam, the traffic police had restricted the traffic on the roads. The Gu household was quite far from the exam venue, so Gu Liangwei got up very early and drove the two sisters to the place in his old delivery van. It was coincidental that the two of them were taking the exam in the same school. When he dropped them off, Gu Liangwei constantly reminded them, "Don't be too nervous during the exam. Just do it as you normally would." He kept reminding his two daughters to not be nervous, but his forehead was already full of perspiration. Bvec young Mengshan wrapped her arms around Gu Liangwei's arm and said in a cute manner, "Daddy, don't worry. When have your daughters ever disappointed you?" Chapter 8. You are listening at novelfull.audio. First suspicion, he really did not have to worry about his younger daughter, young Mengshan. Throughout her time in high school, her position as the topper in the class had always been secure. The one he was worried about was his elder daughter, Gu Yoli, who had mediocre grades. He was afraid that she would not be able to do well and won't even manage to enter a vocational polytechnic. Gu Liangwei turned to look at Gu Yoli and said with a smile, "Yoli, you can't lose to your sister. You must do well." Gu Yoli smiled confidently and pressed her lips together lightly as she said, "I will." Gu Liangwei saw how calm and composed her smile was and could not help but take a second look at her. He thought that till yesterday morning, this child had been full of worries. But right now, she seemed like a completely changed person. Her eyes were sparkling brightly and she was exuding an extraordinary sense of confidence. He suddenly had a feeling that perhaps his elder daughter might surprise everyone. Young Mengshan, who saw this scene, said smilingly, "Daddy, don't worry. Sis and I will do our best." Gu Yoli glanced at her, and then looked at Gu Liangwei. Daddy, the exam will take really long. Go ahead and do your thing. We will do our best. Gu Liangwei smiled. Daddy has already put away all the work for today. I'll wait for the two of you here. Just like in the previous life, Gu Liangwei waited for the two sisters in front of the school. In the past, Gu Yoli had come out to look for Gu Liangwei before the exam even started. That was because she had lost her admission ticket. Up until now, Gu Yoli still could not understand how it suddenly disappeared when she had put it carefully in her bag. After she had entered the school, she told young Mengshan to look after her bag while she went to the toilet. Apart from that, she had not let anyone else touch her bag. She had trusted young Mengshan too much at that time and hence, never suspected her. When she thought of it now, she wondered if young Mengshan had been the one behind the episode. Had young Mengshan already begun plotting against her behind her back at this time? Or perhaps it was even earlier, just that she had not known about it. In that case, would she lose her exam admission ticket in this life as well? Gu Yoli sat on her chair and looked out at the grass patch outside the school. The place was bustling with excitement while she lay lost in her thoughts. Ednel.co Young Mengshan sat beside Gu Yoli and glanced at her sitting there calmly, looking as though she was pondering over something. She smiled, reached out to wrap her arm around Gu Yoli, and asked her, "Sis, aren't you nervous at all?" Gu Yoli looked down and then glanced at her. She did not have any expression on her face. "Why would I be nervous?" Young Mengshan seemed to be shocked. "But 2 days ago, you were." Gu Yoli suddenly stood up and looked at young Mengshan. She said to her with a smile, "That was 2 days ago. Today is today." Her sharp and elegant eyes held a magnificent aloofness. "Sis, As young Mengshan watched in shock, Gu Yoli smiled slightly and said, "Mengshan, I need to go to the washroom. Could you help me take care of my bag?" "Sure, sis." Young Mengshan reached over to take Gu Yoli's bag immediately. Gu Yoli passed her bag to young Mengshan just as she did in her previous life and turned to leave. But this time, she did not go to the washroom. Instead, she went to the place where students could apply for a temporary admission ticket. She told the teacher that she had lost her ticket and needed to apply for a new one. When she had found out that she lost her exam admission ticket in her previous life, it had been too late for her to get a temporary one. Chapter 9. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. A poisonous white lotus. So, in this life, instead of worrying if she would lose her ticket or not, she had better apply for another one as a backup. At the same time, she could use this chance to see Yang Mengshan's true colors. When Gu Yoli came back, Yang Mengshan stood up and asked her with a smile, "Are there a lot of people in the washroom?" It was exactly as she had behaved in the previous life. Gu Yoli said with a shrug, "It's all right." At this time, young Mengshan did not say that she wanted to go to the washroom as well. Instead, she pulled Gu Yoli along to the school canteen to buy a drink. While they were queuing up, young Mengshan turned to look at Gu Yoli with a smile and said, "Sis, can you queue up to buy something for me while I go to the washroom?" Gu Yoli immediately opened her bag to search for her exam admission ticket after young Mengshan left. She had checked it before she went to the washroom and as expected, the exam admission ticket in her bag was really missing. Gu Yoli's face sank and her gaze became gloomy. After a while, she smiled in a self-mocking way. She had actually been hoping for something else. She had held a tiny hope that her exam admission ticket would still be in her bag. Gu Yoli sighed silently as though to finally let it go. She laughed at herself. Young Mengshan jumped back in surprise when she opened the door of the toilet cubicle and saw Gu Yoli standing outside. She got agitated and even swayed a little as her legs trembled. But she regained her composure immediately and smiled at Gu Yoli. "Sis, why are you here again?" Gu Yoli's gaze was slightly cold as she looked at young Mengshan. "I drank too much water in the morning. I was afraid that I would have to go to the toilet again during the exam, so I've come here now, Beto." As she said that, she retracted her gaze calmly and walked into the cubicle from where young Mengshan had exited. As they moved past each other, for some reason, young Mengshan seemed to get a feeling that Gu Yoli was really arrogant and aloof, nothing like how she was in the recent past. She glanced back at the cubicle door that Gu Yoli had closed and smiled sinisterly as she turned to leave. After Gu Yoli closed the cubicle door, her gaze landed at the dustbin lying there. She saw a white plastic cover inside. That was something familiar. It was the one which she had used to put her exam admission ticket in. Gu Yoli clenched her fists, subconsciously. Her nails dug into her palms and her knuckles turned white. She did not have to think any further to know what young Mengshan did in here, just now. She had torn the plastic apart to bring out the exam admission ticket before flushing it down the toilet. As for the plastic, it was too hard to tear and could not be flushed, so she could only throw it into the bin. Young Mengshan, so at the age of 18, you were already a poisonous white lotus. With an appearance as pure and beautiful as a white lotus, clean and innocent, looking as though she doesn't know anything but is actually dangerous and cunning. Gu Yoli bit her lower lip and trembled in anger. She really wanted to rush out and give young Mengshan a few slaps. Young Mengshan's act of losing Gu Yoli's exam admission ticket had impacted her whole life in the previous birth. But she had remained completely in the dark and continued treating her as a beloved family member. She remembered how young Mengshan had comforted her but scolded her as well, for being careless at that time. She had claimed that Gu Yoli must have lost it in the canteen with so much conviction that even Gu Yoli had believed it. No wonder young Mengshan had taken her to the canteen before going to the washroom. Other than making sure that she had no time to apply for a temporary exam admission ticket, she also got rid of any chances of suspicion falling upon her. Gu Yoli bit her lower lip really hard. She would definitely make young Mengshan pay for all the suffering and humiliation that she had received in her previous life, 1,010,000 times more in this life. Chapter 10. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The first step towards changing her life. As the bell rang, Gu Yoli walked into her exam venue. There were two invigilators who were checking the students' exam admission tickets carefully before opening a huge envelope with "confidential" written on it and giving out the exam papers one by one. The classroom was very quiet and the only sounds one could hear were the sounds of paper flipping and pens scratching furiously on the papers. The moment the students received their papers, they started working on the questions promptly. Gu Yoli was the only one who looked at the exam paper without moving. She had not got the chance to take the college entrance exam in her previous life. Right now, it felt surreal for her to sit in the exam venue as she looked at the exam paper in front of her. At the same time, she was also very excited because this was the first step towards changing her life. After using 2 minutes to calm herself down, Gu Yoli started working on the questions. Language had always been Gu Yoli's forte. She finished the paper with ease and her handwriting was neat and legible. She checked the answers 5 times, almost like a psycho, before she handed it in. Yang Mengshan and Gul Yongwei were chatting as they stood at the entrance of the school. When Gul Yongwei saw Gu Yoli walk out of the school, his eyes lit up and he quickly rushed over and handed her a bottle of cold water. "Yoli, how did it go? Was it difficult? Did you finish the paper?" He fanned Gu Yoli with a magazine in his hand as he asked nervously. Yang Mengshan also ran towards Gu Yoli in small steps. She wrapped her soft arms affectionately around Gu Yoli's arm and shouted sweetly, "Sis." Her affectionate moves made Gu Yoli take 2 steps back, subconsciously. Yang Mengshan looked up at Gu Yoli in bewilderment. Gu Yoli pushed Yang Mengshan's hands away coldly and unhappily. In Yang Mengshan's eyes, she looked very upset. What could she be upset about? Of course, it must be because she missed the college entrance exam. After all, she had lost her exam admission ticket. Yang Mengshan was delighted inside but a horrified expression appeared on her face as she stared at Gu Yoli, looking as though she had seen something very scary. "Sis, what's wrong? You look unhappy." "Gosh. I just heard a person saying that someone from your exam venue lost her exam admission ticket. Don't tell me it's you." She exclaimed out loud as if it was because she was too worked up. Immediately, she covered her mouth and looked at Gul Yongwei in horror. The hand which was fanning Gu Yoli stopped. Gul Yongwei looked at Gu Yoli in disbelief. "What? Yoli, you actually lost your exam admission ticket?" "Dad, don't be angry. Sis didn't do it on purpose." Yang Mengshan went up immediately to comfort Gul Yongwei. "How infuriating. You are good for nothing." Gul Yongwei's face sank and he looked at Gu Yoli with pain in his eyes. He was burning with rage because of the acute disappointment. He lifted his hand which held the magazine, throwing a hard blow on Gu Yoli. Gu Yoli's face was overcast. She did not dodge and received the hit head-on. In her previous life, when Gul Yongwei had found out that she lost her exam admission ticket and thus, was unable to take part in the college entrance exam, he had whacked her then also with a magazine in his hand. At that time, she had fallen to the ground due to the pain and her face was tear-streaked but she had not uttered a single word of complaint. She knew that Gul Yongwei had only gotten so angry because he really held very high hopes for her. Yang Mengshan jumped back. It was the first time she saw Gul Yongwei get so angry. Gul Yongwei might be uncouth but he would never hit his daughters. This was the first time that he did so and the one he hurt was actually his elder daughter, whom he doted on the most.